Dark greetings, everybody. I don't think I'm gonna make it through the intro with these. Oh, whew. Almost swallowed these twice. But hi, dark greetings, welcome. If this is your first time on my channel, you're a little confused, welcome. My name's Anna. I'm a clinical psychology doctoral candidate and a therapist. On this channel, we talk about real-life applications to psychology, but this time of year, we also talk about spookier topics, and today we are talking about the psychology of psychological vampires. So I did a video on the psychology of vampires last HALLOWEEK, but this year I want to talk about psychological vampires, not just the legend, but what a psychological vampire would look like. You may have heard of psychic vampires or energy vampires, either from pop culture references, such as What We Do in the Shadows, which is a great TV show, by the way, highly recommend it. It's like The Office, but with vampires, and it actually has two actors from The Office. One of them is Nate, who is fantastic, and the other one is, I believe, Dwight's aunt. I've heard of energy or psychic vampires also existing in the spiritual community as well.
You forgot Daryl.
Oh yeah. Hey, why are you listening? And also Daryl from The Office is in What We Do in the Shadows, so yeah, it's a great show, you should watch it. Although I will say the new season isn't that great, but the first two are fantastic. But what I'm talking about today is slightly different. So I'm not big on energy as a concept, but I am big on psychology. So today I'll be exploring the questions, what might a psychological vampire look like? How would it affect you? And how could you react to one? How could you protect yourself against a psychologically draining person? Some signs you're dealing with a psychological vampire. The first one is you feel your positive emotions drained and your negative emotions heightened after interacting with them. Let's say you've been in the presence of somebody and you could feel yourself visibly getting worse and worse in terms of your emotional state the longer you stayed around them. It's like your happiness and excitement start to dissipate. Meanwhile, your sadness, anger, fear, they all start to go up. Positive emotions go down, negative emotions go up. Maybe you're at a party and you're having a good time talking to your friends, and then somebody walks in and suddenly maybe they take up all the space in the room, or they're being really rude, or they make it known that they don't like you, or you start to feel really small. For some reason, they are draining your positive emotions and amping up the negative ones. Another sign you could be dealing with a psychological vampire is your self-esteem feels shaken. After interacting with such a person, you feel like your self-esteem is worse off than when you started interacting with them. Maybe they're being very critical, or they're behaving very coldly towards you, or maybe they make it known that they dislike you through their body language or minor phrases. But either way, you find yourself afterwards nitpicking everything about yourself, finding something wrong with everything you said or did, feeling like a failure, like you can't do anything right, like you should just give up because you're just never gonna get it right. Psychological vampires also drain your empathy. Just like energy, emotion, self-esteem, our empathy can also be depleted. I know there are people that don't like this concept, that like to think we have this unlimited reservoir of empathy, but from my experience, there's no such thing as an unlimited reservoir of anything. And personally, I know when I have clients back to back to back, once my day is over, if someone is telling me something and I don't already feel strongly about the topic, I find it really hard to muster the empathy to show that empathy sometimes. And just like multiple people can collectively deplete our empathy and make us burn out, so can one singular person deplete our empathy. Usually this is when someone makes us feel like we are responsible for solving their issues, or they're complaining a lot to us, or they're giving us a very woe is me narrative where they're always being wronged, or they're always in such distress that we have to take in the reins and regulate them. In essence, someone that can't solve their own problems and puts all that pressure on us. Psychological vampires also inhibit your decision making. You might find yourself feeling paralyzed with indecisiveness after being in contact with a psychological vampire, to the point where you don't know what to do. You can't make a decision about the relationship. You can't think clearly. You can't even think where you want to go for dinner. You can't see the long-term costs and benefits of a decision. You're only really acting on impulse. This might be because someone has confused you to the point where you no longer trust your judgment, and you're losing sight of the forest of the trees. You're being blindsided by their manipulation, and so on. Another sign you're dealing with a psychological vampire is your attention span and your ability to concentrate gets really low after you see them. Just like on a day after I've been overusing my empathy is kind of low, It's the same with my attention span. If I've been paying very close attention to what people are saying without much break for 8 hours straight, understandably my attention span is going to be lower when those 8 hours are over. For you, you might find that a psychological vampire has taken up so much of your attention, where you feel like they have so much they want to tell you and you can't afford to miss a single thing, and afterwards you can't even concentrate and they get mad at you if you don't remember something. You have to constantly be paying attention, walking on eggshells around them. You might be watching TV and not even listening to what the actors are saying afterwards. You might be hearing someone talk to you and just nod along and not pay attention at all to what they're saying. You're functioning on autopilot. You can't focus anymore. Psychological vampires also take away your psychological strength. We all have some level of resiliency, but when you are using that psychological strength to resist someone psychologically harming you for a period of long time, eventually those walls start to crumble. You can only take so much before you have to rest. Just like you can only defend yourself physically for a finite period of time before you have to rest, so you also have to rest psychologically. But this person has broken you down so relentlessly for so long that your psychological strength starts to waver. Maybe you begin to cry at a minor inconvenience like a product not being in store, or you feel very fragile, or you feel stuck or impotent, or you feel like you can no longer protect yourself. They've broken you in psychologically. Hi all, this is Anna from the future. So this was where I had initially included 8 minutes of me talking about the behaviors I've observed in people who have psychologically drained me personally. But after editing through that content and sitting on it for a few days, I realized I just don't want to include that in there because honestly, what's psychologically draining for me could have no effect at all on you, or it could even emotionally heighten you. It depends a lot on the specific person and the context. And also, I just don't want to call out specific behaviors from psychological vampires I've known in my life because it would go against what I talk about in the next part of this video, which is to not give these types of people the satisfaction of receiving your attention. And since this is a public forum for me, I do not want to be calling out these types of people publicly. So I won't be talking about specific behaviors I've noticed in psychological vampires in my life, but I do encourage you to write down in the comments below if you feel comfortable what sorts of traits or behaviors you find to be psychologically draining for you specifically. Okay, let's get into the juicy part of this video, which is how to deal with people who drain you psychologically. So in this next step, I'm going to teach you how to protect yourself against a psychological vampire, but remember that protecting yourself does not require being cruel. So how do you deal with a psychological vampire? It's pretty simple. You don't feed them. You completely cut off their access. This means that you cut off their access to your attention, your energy, your time, your words, your empathy. I learned the skill about in the past year when dealing with psychological vampires both online and in person. If I were to sum it up in one word, non-reactivity. Being authentic to yourself when you're not around them, but still cutting off yourself from people who would drain you. You still get to be an interesting, well-rounded person, but you just don't give access to these specific people. What does this actually look like? I'll start with an online example because this is simpler and generally clearer for people to understand. It means that if someone is baiting you online, you do not respond. Not even a snarky okay, not even to defend yourself, not even to clap back, nothing. You do not even acknowledge their existence. You do not acknowledge that they addressed you. They mean so little to you that you don't even spend a minute of your time thinking about them. I used to preface my videos about social rights by telling people that any hateful comments will be swiftly blocked, but it was still giving them too much of my attention and energy. Nowadays, I don't even acknowledge them. I realize that's what makes psychological vampires the angriest, being ignored. People like this always want attention. It's what they feed off of. If you refuse to acknowledge that they exist, that is the best revenge you could give them. With someone from your real life, non-reactivity might mean that someone sends you an angry, hurtful text message and you do not even respond. You do not even acknowledge that they addressed you. You leave them wondering about what you're thinking, going up a wall, not knowing how you feel about them, feeling exasperated knowing that you didn't take their bait, that they hold no power over you, that their manipulation was unsuccessful. So oftentimes non-reactivity means going no contact. You do not speak to them, you do not reach out to them, you do not unblock them. When you see them, you act like they're a complete stranger, and you avert your gaze very casually as if they mean so little to you that you can't even be bothered to feel activated by their sight. Sorry, I have no idea what my upstairs neighbor is doing right now. They never do this. If they try to guilt you or make you seem like they need your support when you have vowed that you will no longer give your empathy to this person to be taken advantage of, You do not give it to them. You can still feel empathy for someone without acting on it if it will make you a prisoner to their manipulation. You can tell someone, I'm sorry that you're going through a difficult time, I hope things work out for you, without taking it upon yourself to save them. If they try to take advantage of you, like if they try to convince you to do something for them that takes a lot of your time or energy, you stand your ground. You simply say, unfortunately, I don't have the time to help you with all this, and you do not respond again. Even if they try to emotionally blackmail you, even if they ask you again, even if they get angry, even if they try to sweeten you up because they realize you figured them out, even if they try to negotiate, you are non-reactive. Non-reactivity also means that you go radio silent after you cut them off or after they started a smear campaign against you. You don't make any passive-aggressive posts on social media. You don't try to defend yourself against their lies. You don't talk to other people about them. Nothing. It's business as usual for you. You make it seem like they meant so little to you that you are completely unbothered. If you're out for revenge, that is truly the best revenge against a person like this. Nothing will infuriate them more than realizing you have completely cut off their access to you. And remember, these tips are for people who have proven themselves to be a psychological drain on you, not people that you care about. I do not recommend you ignore, for instance, your partner when they're expressing a concern about their relationship. No, only people who have shown a very strong pattern that is not changing of taking advantage of you. A few other thoughts. I think this is a bit different from psychological activators who make you explode. These types of people more so feed off of you, they drain you. I imagine there are other types of people that would make you more emotionally activated as opposed to drained. Another thing is this prototype is what has psychologically drained me personally, but what drains you could look completely different. So I highly recommend, if you have a different outlook on some things that drain you that I didn't include in my list, write those in the comments down below. I would be very curious to see how your psychological vampire looks. I hope this video is helpful to you. I hope Spooktober is going well for you so far, and I'll see you next time.